What does a farm horse, a world record racing airplane built out of wood, and a squadron of Polish pilots refusing a direct order all have in common? Believe it or not, they're all chapters in the story of one forgotten French aircraft company. And once you see how they're connected, you'll wonder why Caudron isn't mentioned alongside aviation's biggest names. Most stories have another side. This one's just a little stranger. I'm Bill, and this is Buffalo Air Park. Let's dive in. When most people think of great aviation manufacturers, names like Boeing, de Havilland, or Supermarine usually come to mind. But tucked away in northern France was a company that quietly shaped aviation history for more than 3 decades. Their airplanes crossed mountain ranges, shattered speed records, embarrassed the world's best racers, and even fought against impossible odds during World War II. And somehow, it all started with a horse. In 1908, brothers Gaston and René Caudron were running a farm in the Somme region of France. Like countless young men of the era, they had become fascinated by the idea of powered flight, so they built themselves a giant biplane glider. There was just one small problem. They hadn't received the engine yet. Most people probably would have waited. The Caudron brothers didn't. Instead, they hitched the unfinished aircraft to their mare, Lucille. French for firefly. Well, my French isn't that good, obviously. As the horse galloped across the field, René climbed into the glider and actually became airborne behind it like an enormous kite. It's one of those stories that almost sounds made up, except it really happened. That unusual beginning sparked what would become one of France's most respected aircraft manufacturers. When World War I erupted in 1914, Caudron shifted almost overnight into military production. Their G3 reconnaissance aircraft became one of the most successful trainers and observation airplanes of the war, while the twin-engine G4 expanded their reputation even further. But one detail about the brothers has always stood out to me. They refused to charge the French government any licensing fees for the G3. Not because they had to, because they believed it was the right thing to do during wartime. It's difficult to imagine many companies making that decision today. Sadly, the story took a tragic turn in 1915 when Gaston Caudron was killed while testing a new prototype. René suddenly found himself carrying the company forward alone. Fortunately, Gaston's legacy lived on through the airplanes. One of the most famous examples came in 1921 when French aviator Adrienne Boland climbed into a humble Caudron G3 and became the first woman to fly across the Andes Mountains. Not in a specially built record aircraft, just a dependable little airplane that had already proven itself during the war. By the early 1930s, however, Caudron was struggling financially. Then, in 1933, the company was purchased by the automotive manufacturer Renault. That decision would completely change the company's future. Renault brought in an extraordinary aerodynamic engineer named Marcel Riffard. Riffard hated drag. Every unnecessary bump, every sharp corner, every little disturbance in the airflow bothered him. His designs became smoother, cleaner, and faster than almost anything flying at the time. The best example was the Caudron Rafale racing series. These sleek racers look like they belonged a decade in the future. What surprises most people is what they were made from. Not aluminum. Wood. Spruce, birch plywood, and one particularly unusual material, Cameroon walnut, for the wing spars because it offered exceptional strength while remaining remarkably light. Riffard even used magnesium for the engine cowling and fuel tanks to shave away every possible pound. The C450 was impressive enough, but the improved C460 raised the bar even higher with fully retractable landing gear. Even that system wasn't simple. The wheels actually had to move backward as they folded away so they could fit ahead of the main wing spar. It's the kind of engineering solution that's wonderfully clever, and probably made the maintenance crews sigh every time they saw it. The effort paid off. In 1934, famed French aviator Helene Boucher used the Rafale to establish multiple women's world speed records before her tragic death later that year. Then, on Christmas Day, test pilot Raymond Delmont pushed the C-460 to a new world land-plane speed record of more than 505 kilometers per hour. For a mostly wooden airplane, that's astonishing. But my favorite chapter came 2 years later. In 1936, French pilot Michel Detroit packed up his little Caudron and headed to the national air races in Los Angeles. The Americans arrived with enormous racing engines producing far more horsepower. On paper, they should have dominated. Instead, the tiny French racer beat them. Detroit won both the Grieve Trophy and the Thompson Trophy, stunning American spectators and proving that brilliant aerodynamics could sometimes accomplish what brute horsepower couldn't. That's one of my favorite lessons in aviation history. Sometimes intelligence beats size. Of course, Rifford wasn't finished chasing speed. His next racer, the C-461, featured perhaps the strangest cockpit I've ever seen. To eliminate canopy drag, he blended the canopy completely into the fuselage. The pilot could barely see forward. Instead, visibility came through tiny glazed channels along the sides. Imagine racing at over 250 miles per hour while looking through what amounted to a pair of narrow mail slots. That's dedication to aerodynamics. Unfortunately, history was about to catch up with Caudron. As the war approached, France needed fighters, and quickly. The Air Ministry asked for an aircraft built largely from non-strategic materials, especially wood. Caudron responded with the C-714 Cyclone. Unfortunately, racing airplanes and combat fighters don't always follow the same rules. The lightweight wooden airframe couldn't carry a powerful engine, leaving the Cyclone badly underpowered against the German Messerschmitt Bf-109s. Its climb rate was poor. Its landing gear was fragile. Mechanical problems were common. French officials eventually ordered the aircraft withdrawn from combat. But one unit refused. Polish pilots who had escaped the fall of their homeland weren't interested in waiting for better airplanes. They wanted to fight, so they ignored the order. Flying what many considered an obsolete wooden fighter, they attacked anyway. Against incredible odds, they claimed a dozen confirmed victories in only a few days of combat. One pilot described diving alone into a formation of nearly 30 Messerschmitts, scattering the entire group before shooting down enemy aircraft. Even as bullets smashed through his own instrument panel. Whether the airplane deserved its reputation or not, there's no questioning the courage of the men who flew it. Looking back, it's remarkable how one company could leave behind such a varied legacy. A horse pulling a glider across a farm, a patriotic aircraft designer refusing wartime royalties, elegant wooden racers defeating the world's best, and determined pilots choosing to fight in an airplane almost everyone else had already given up on. For a company that many people have never heard of, Caudron certainly gave aviation history some unforgettable stories. And that wraps up another tale from aviation's stranger side. Until next time, keep your eyes on the skies.